Thank you so much for joining the Community Ledger. I wanted to hop on here today because I have been seeing Trump's stance and what his plans are for the first day of office recirculating on the internet. Now, he hasn't come out since winning to state exactly like a finite plan on what he plans to do, but I did think that this was an important video just as a reminder of what his plans are outside of deportation. So it gives a little bit more context into how serious he is going to be in regards to undoing a lot of these liberal democratic policies and the impact that it has on families. So let's take a look.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars.
Hold on, I gotta rewind this. Did he say transgender surgeries of any age?
Their physical appearance and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask...
That is correct. I heard that correctly. He said he's going to put in an executive order to stop all transgender surgeries, no matter the age. To stop all transgender surgeries, no matter the age. Wow.
Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female.
Woo! This is deep. Deep.
And they are assigned at birth. The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports, and we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parents' consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of In all of human history, nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end. Thank you very much.
Wow. Trump ain't playing. Like, he said all that transgender stuff, all that boys and girls sports, that's done. And you had the new Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown not be able to define a woman. He said, oh, that's done. We done with that. We done playing them games. He said, I'm going to make sure that it is written in law exactly what a male and a female is, and ain't nothing else. So all this non-binary, them, they, she, them, they, we pronouns, he said, we done with all that. I'm canceling all of it. All of it. Period. Like, I'm done with it. Like, wow. He said he is promoting the nuclear family of a male and female, and that's it. We not doing puberty blockers. We not doing hormone treatments. We not doing none of that. Like, it's over. If you are a teacher and you are educating a child on the ability, if you are telling them they even have the ability to change their gender, there are going to be ramifications. He said any medical institutions, any hospitals who are performing these surgeries or giving puberty blockers and altering these kids' hormones is being shut down. Shut down. No federal grants, no federal funding. I'm shutting it all down. He's like, nobody else in the world is doing that. In all of human history, this has never been heard, and I'm done with it. I'm done with it. And I mean, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, the entire reason that I was, a staunch advocate of removing my children from the school system was simply because I was not open to them being educated on adult sexual concepts that I felt that they were too young to be introduced to, one. And two, I don't want anybody outside of my home educating my son on the idea of him being able to be a girl, or my daughter with the idea that she can possibly be a boy. So I'm raising my family as a nucleus family with male and female, and that's it. And so, as harsh as that may sound to a lot of people who are open to that way of thinking, it appears that what he's trying to do is just make that like a niche part of society. Like, that's what you want to do, you do it over there, but that's no longer going to be the American way. That's no longer going to be the standard. That's no longer going to be introduced in schools. We are no longer having doctors and nurses perform these things. We're no longer worrying about men identifying as women and being in women's sports and doing all and doing all kind of crazy stuff to win, and he's shutting all of it down. Yikes. I have another video where he talks about his plans for deportation, and that's deep also. Let's take a look.
Promised to conduct what he calls the largest deportation program in American history on day one of his new term.
And that message resonated with more voters this year than ever before. In an NBC News exit poll from Election Day, 40% of voters across the nation said undocumented immigrants should be deported. That's a 15% jump from when Mr. Trump was first elected to the White House back in 2016.
For more on this, we're joined now by NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, good morning. So you've reported Mr. Trump is also considering withholding federal police grants from local law enforcement, so police departments and sheriff's departments that decline to take part in those proposed massive deportations. Walk us through the basics of this. I mean, roughly how many people could be targeted? Who would carry that out?
Well, Joe, it's something they tried in the previous Trump administration, but they were blocked in courts. But when you point out the polling like that, they think now they have the firepower and a new legal strategy that could push this through. What they're talking about is withholding federal grants to sanctuary cities. Any jurisdiction, you could look at New York, for example, many in Maryland, Chicago, Colorado, places across the country, California as a state that would not have access to this very large pot, about $250 million of federal funding that goes out to law enforcement, not just to help with cops, but also things like drug rehab programs. A lot of law enforcement agencies, especially those in underserved areas, really depend on those federal grants. And they sued in the last administration, led by New York, to say that they could not withhold these for sanctuary policies. But now, the incoming Trump administration thinks they could withhold those funds again, not only to get sanctuary cities to hand over migrants, undocumented migrants, to ICE for deportation, but actually to go out and identify anyone they think might be undocumented to be part of that mass deportation force we were talking about.
Republicans also regain control of the Senate in this election. Will hold the majority in that chamber for the first time in 4 years. Control of the House, of course, is still up in the air. But let's just say, what would full control of government mean for Trump's plans? What could it actually mean for controlling the border and any of these, proposals, theories that we talk about actually happening?
Well, it certainly would eliminate some of those checks and balances, but in large part, it would mean more funding. In fact, if you look at one of the things that Harris always complained about on the border was that Republicans stood in her way, really, stood in the Biden administration's way of passing that border security bill that would have put more people at the border. Now, if they win the House, if Republicans win the House, you could have a massive funding bill to the incoming Trump administration on immigration that could triple the size of Customs and Border Protection, Border Patrol, and ICE that would allow them to expand detention capacity. And I still think it's a long way off to see how they would deport millions of migrants in a very short amount of time, even with that amount of money, but it would certainly get them started.
So another NBC News exit poll found a majority of voters nationwide have more trust in Mr. Trump to handle immigration. You have some new exclusive reporting that the Biden administration is making contingency plans for a possible surge in border crossings ahead of a Trump presidency. What can you tell us about that? I'm also just curious, do they think there could be a surge, or do they think that the fact that Mr. Trump could take office could actually discourage people from coming?
What they think, and it's something that we saw at the end of the Obama administration leading up to the first Trump administration, is that there could be more people who decide to come between now and when Trump is inaugurated, because they think, sometimes falsely so, that the door is simply going to close and the time is now. Sometimes we've seen smugglers exploit that in these chat groups. And in fact, we're able to watch some of the chatter there. I have some of this translated right here. People saying after the 21 of January, he will close the borders with extreme security. There's not a lot of time left. You have until January to enter. All things that people are hearing both from smugglers who are advertising their services and from the migrants considering coming. And we know this is something the Biden administration is planning for now.
All right, Julia Ainsley, always appreciate your reporting. Thank you.
Woo! So there you have it. Trump, again, like I said, Trump is not playing. He is serious. He said he's going to start withholding funds, grants to local police departments and sheriff departments if they don't work with him to deport these migrants. So if these sanctuary cities, if these cities decide, okay, we're going to make contingencies to allow these people to stay, then the federal government is saying, okay, you're going to have to figure out your own funds on how you're going to fund the police, because I'm not funding it. I'm not using taxpayer dollars to support the police or sheriffs or any law and order needed in your city. So either you work with me, or you're going to have to give up these people, or you're going to have to fend on your own. So he's telling these sanctuary cities, I would say all cities, listen, if you want to continue to get federal money and federal grants, then you're going to have to cooperate with getting these people out of your city. So ICE is going to have to work with the police department, so that they can start gathering up these migrants and getting them out of the country. 40% of Americans stated that they wanted a mass deportation policy. That is a lot more than in 2016. In 2016, they said it was only 25% of Americans who felt like migrants should be deported. Now it's 40%. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think that most Americans have any problem with legal immigration or legals being in this country. I think based on the fact that there's so many here that are here illegally, at the same time, not vetted in any way, shape, or form, actually causing crimes and chaos in certain cities, sanctuary cities specifically, and then law enforcement can't do anything about it, is just too much to bear. I think America is just at its breaking point, and the citizens have had enough. And you have to realize, we always talk about tax dollars, but just think about it. Every 2 weeks, every month, however frequently you get paid, that money is snatched out of your check before you even receive it. Okay? Before you even receive it, the federal government takes their share. Every freaking 2 weeks. If you've been working since you were a teenager and you in your 40s, 50s, however old you are, you've been paying taxes for decades. Okay? Decades. And all of this money is just being thrown it's like, the Democratic Party is just making it rain all over the place. And Americans are like, wait a minute, I'm paying for this. Like, I'm working for this. My slave labor is financing this craziness. We are financing this war in Ukraine. We are financing this war in Israel. We are financing all of these immigrants coming here. And when we're providing housing, when we're providing medical, when we're providing food, that comes from what we earn, our wages, because they're not working. So when they get here, they don't have a job. So that money, it's not like the government just has this massive slush fund that, they create on their own or that they invest in. No, those are tax-paying dollars. That's from America's labor. And so when you think about it that way, it's like, hold on. I didn't agree to this. And so that is why, you've seen a huge turn in the tide with regards to people turning their backs on the Democratic Party and people just needing some level of stability back into office. And they see that with Trump. I know that transgender surgeries are very popular amongst a certain demographic. I know that biological males in women's sports are very popular in certain demographics, but those demographics, I think, are fairly small compared to the masses, and the masses are not okay with that. The masses are like, no, enough is enough. I don't want to put my daughter in sports and she be competing with a boy. I do not want my daughter going to the gym and there is a biological male in there. No, I do not want all these immigrants living off my tax-paying dollars, like off my wages. Like, no. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And this is why Kamala was washed, okay? Because they already felt like it was just going to be more of the same. And they gave her a multitude of opportunities to say she was going to do something different. And she said, nothing comes to mind. I'm going to do everything the same. Yes, I'm different than Biden, but there's nothing that I'm going to do that's different. And so they were like, okay. Just went right into that booth and checked the Trump box. And now they are like in mass hysteria trying to figure out who to blame and have failed to look at themselves. That whole transgender surgery situation, I think it is extreme. I was on board. I was supporting him trying to put a ban on it happening to minors because I didn't feel like that was right. I feel like, you have to be 18 to vote. You have to be 18 to buy cigarettes. You got to be 21 to buy and drink alcohol. You got to be a certain age to get a driver's license. You got to be a certain age to to enlist in the military. But yet you can alter your body from one gender to another at 12. Like, how is that is abuse? Like, how can you expect a child to make such a heavy decision that will impact their life for the rest of their lives at such a young age? And to me, putting a stop to that is necessary. 100%. In my opinion, it's necessary. It has to be done. Now, if an adult wants to do it, somebody that's over 18 and they want to do whatever they want to do to their body, I think they have that right. But it sounds like he's trying to cut that out also. He's trying to shut it all down. He is trying to shut all of it down. And so I'm like, listen, We voted for somebody to come in here and clean up and make hard decisions and get some order. And so I'm riding with it. I'm gonna just have to ride with it. And so, what's your opinion? How do you feel about it? How do you feel about his policies and his thoughts and his ideas with regards to transgender surgeries on minors as well as adults? And how do you feel about, withholding funds from police in certain cities in order to get them to cooperate with ICE and the federal government to deport a large amount of migrants? I would love to hear your opinion. So again, please, if you are enjoying this conversation and this content, please do press the like button, share, and comment. And again, thank you so much for sharing this moment with me. Again, my name is Drea Banu, and this is the Community Ledger.